Let's talk about grants, baby. Let's talk for a moment about grants and why I don't like them. I have spent a decade in nonprofit fundraising, and the high percentage, well over 95%, I guess if there's a well over 95% of my funding has come from individuals in the community, businesses within the community, which are owned by individuals, right? It's all been grassroots, person to person fundraising. I've spent a little bit of time in the grant space, and more so early on in my fundraising career, before I realized a few of the things that I'm about to share with you that really pushed me away from seeking grants and farther into seeking donations from individuals within my community. So number one for me with respect to grants, the number one challenge is that there's a disconnect in values a lot of times between grant making organizations and what makes a thriving nonprofit, right? So grant making organizations often want to focus on programs over people, right? You hear things like, we will not fund salaries, so on and so forth. It's all about programs. We'll fund programs. But any nonprofit leader knows that people are what create incredible programs, right? You can have the prettiest sports car in the world. If you don't have a driver for that sports car, it doesn't matter, right? And so grants want to pay for programs while our people are, not able to get paid well. And at the end of the day, your programs are always going to suffer if you don't have the money for the people. The people are upstream from quality programs. And additionally, another thing that grant making organizations tend to value that I don't think is good for the development of a nonprofit is valuing quantity over quality, right? So about midway through my nonprofit career, I was doing sports camps for over 100 campers. We'd have over 400 to 500 people in attendance at camp, right? It's this really big boom of like, wow, that's really cool. And that's the type of stuff that grant making organizations, salivate over. But I stopped doing that to start an organization where we employed people with disabilities. And that meant that we were going to work with a smaller constituency, but we were going to go much deeper with that constituency of people and help them and live life alongside of them, right? In my opinion, the quantity piece is far more important than quality, but grant-making organizations are all about the numbers. How many people are you serving? How many people could you serve if we give you this money? So on and so forth, which again focuses the nonprofit leader in the wrong direction. It should be about quality and not quantity. And so when I'm filling out grant proposals, I always feel like I'm jumping through these silly hoops and using this crazy terminology to try and appease people who don't even know what it looks like to run a thriving nonprofit, right? It's this silly red tape that I just really struggle with engaging with. Okay, and then on top of that, I feel like reason number two that I've struggled with grants is that there are way easier ways to obtain the money that you need for your nonprofit, right? There are other ways out there that are far less squeeze and far more juice. A lot of grant applications will require you to take 2 or 3 days to accumulate all the documents, get them all the information in the format that they needed, and so on and so forth, to get some money that I might but probably won't receive, right? There's a ton of red tape involved there. And I found it way more fruitful to go sit down with, a lady or a man in the community, maybe a business owner of some sort, and sit down and explain to them what we need and why we need it. It's a 1-hour lunch, and I can walk away a lot of times with a commitment right there. They'll send me a check, and we're off to the races, right? I found that to be a far more fruitful way to spend my time, right? Far more effective and efficient way to spend my fundraising time. And on top of that, right, within the realm of receiving funds from individuals within your community, there's a personal relationship that can be developed, which helps you on a long-term basis, right? If someone has a personal relationship with you, they're more likely to continue giving into the future, whereas some grants will just disappear at different times, right? Which brings me to my third challenge within the grant space. And that is that grants are becoming more and more scarce and less reliable, right? We know with cuts to government funding and all of that grants have gone way down. I know a lot of nonprofits are struggling with that. And on top of that, in general, right, if I get a grant for $100,000 a year, it's a big celebration for a little while. But then if that disappears in 2 years, it leaves me in this massive whole, right? It's really unreliable. And so, again, I tend to push toward individuals in the community to create a more sustainable donor base. And then the fourth challenge is just, this doesn't apply to everyone, but for 7.5 years, I worked for a nonprofit that had a religious affiliation, and a lot of grant-making organizations won't even touch you if you have any sort of religious affiliation, right? So that was another reason that I was pushed toward individuals to raise my money, but I'm glad I was, because it's a whole different ball game. I don't feel like I'm having to jump through these silly hoops. I don't feel like I'm wasting a ton of time. I don't feel like I'm like, oh gosh, this may or may not be there in a couple of years. It's a way more sustainable way to go about raising funds in my mind. So those are the few reasons that I tend to avoid grants and come toward people within my community to raise funds for my organization.